I'm Katie Burke. I'm on staff here at PLC, Princeton Learning Cooperative. So we're sponsoring the event tonight, Youth Perspectives on Education. So PLC, we've been a business, a nonprofit for about 13 years now, and we offer flexible interest-based education to teenagers, which simply means that they can kind of create their own curriculum, learn how they want, when they want, and what they want to learn. So the kids here are legally homeschoolers, which is just the mechanism that allows them to make personal choices about their own learning. And along with that, we have a bunch of classes and one-on-ones and a community of teens to spend time with. So tonight, our panel is teens that are a part of our organization right now and an alumni member as well. They're going to share their educational experiences that were non-conventional and just kind of give you an outlook that might be different than what you're used to. So each panelist is going to share their story, and then there'll be time for Q&A after that. You're welcome to put any kind of questions into the chat. Joel is going to be kind of monitoring the chat, taking questions, and also taking email addresses. If you don't already, if you're not already a part of our email list, you can put your email in there, and you'll get notifications about other events like this and other useful information. So we're going to get started. We have Ryan, who is our alumni, and also Luke and Allison, who are current members. And they're just going to share their experiences. And, Ryan can talk also about not just his experience with us, but after that and how things turned out. So we're very happy to have them here. And thank you guys for giving your time and being willing to talk. So Ryan, we'll start with you.
Hey, so I'm Ryan. As Katie said, I am the alumni here. I went to PLC for 3 years during what would have been normally my high school time. And then I've been out of PLC for about 3.5 years, going to college since then. So I started at PLC in what would have been my sophomore year of high school. During my middle school time and the very beginning of public high school, I was decidedly unhappy there. I was drifting away from my friends. My grades were dropping, and something needed to change. I didn't know what, but something needed to change. So I switched from public high school to online classes for a while. That didn't really work out either. Nothing was improving. I was pretty unhappy as a person. And eventually we came across PLC, and we thought, okay, let's give it a shot. It's something different. It's non-conventional. It can't get worse. So we went there, and Joel, Katie, and Allison, who is another mentor that used to be there and I think has moved to a different center, are a very welcoming group of people. So we went there and they explained how the whole thing worked, how a little bit about what Katie talked about. You get to sort of build your own curriculum, try a bunch of stuff out, and they facilitate you learning the stuff that you want to learn, which is not how public school works at all. Public school, everyone learns the same stuff. There isn't really a lot of room for experimentation and individual growth. So I started to go to PLC, and I am a very slow start kind of person. I don't like to jump into things. I'm not very decisive. It takes me a long time to come to decisions. So I was very reserved for the start of my PLC career. Tried a bunch of different stuff, but I was always pretty quiet. Didn't really come into my own self until probably my second year there, where I got a lot more comfortable with the system, and I started to do stuff I was actually interested in. So for me, the thing that I was interested in the most was accounting. And Katie was my mentor at PLC, and she would set me up with the things I wanted to do. So when I told her that I was interested in accounting, she set me up with a couple volunteers that gave me a lot of great information, and she set me up with an accounting textbook. And from that point on, I did what you're supposed to do at PLC, and I started building my own curriculum and becoming self-motivated and learning the things that I wanted to learn. So I would spend a couple hours a day with an accounting textbook, just on my own, drilling away, doing all the practice, reading a bunch of stuff. and that was a big part of my education there. So I think the biggest thing, the biggest challenge with non-conventional schooling is there are some conventional things that a lot of people would consider to be very important. And the biggest question is, how do you get those conventional things done in a non-conventional setting? So for me, the two big things that I want to talk about are getting into college and getting a driver's license, because I think those are decidedly pretty important. So getting into college was incredibly easy. uh, like I said, I studied with an accounting textbook on my own for a couple hours every day for about a year. And then I started taking night classes at community college while I was still attending PLC. And those were accounting focused night classes. I was going for a business administration associate's degree. So the self-study that I did at PLC allowed me to pass those classes with flying colors. Didn't the fact that I was not in a conventional education setting, I think did wonders for my ability to succeed in a conventional setting. Whereas before, I was really starting to lose motivation in public school and doing a lot a lot worse than I was used to doing. So getting into college was very easy. You basically, for community college especially, you just sign up and you start taking classes, and that lets you do whatever you want. So the other thing is driving, and that was another self-study thing for me. So I spent several hours a day reading a driver's manual and taking practice tests online for probably about 6 months before I took the written test and then the road test as well. So through my self-study, I was able to pass both the written test and my road test on my first try. Once again, non-conventional setting, I think allowed me to do better than a conventional setting ever would, because I got to really focus on the things that were important to me instead of being guided along by a curriculum where maybe sometimes some of the things that I didn't understand so well would get passed over, and some of the things that I already knew we would spend too much time on. So, so that was those were my two biggest worries going into PLC. It's like, can I still become a fully fledged college student with a driver's license doing this? And the answer was decidedly yes. So to talk a little bit about where I am now, I spent 2 years at Mercer County. I got my business administration degree, and then I moved to Rider University, where I'm studying accounting. I'm currently in my senior year there. I've got 1 semester left for my undergraduate degree, and I will be starting my master's program after that. And I also got an internship last summer. I worked as a tax intern at Novo Nordisk for about 8 months, and my time there just came to an end recently. So all of the things, all of the very important conventional things that I think a lot of people worry about with non-conventional education, they still came to fruition for me in ways that I don't think the opportunities that presented themselves, I do not think I would have been able to take advantage of as well if I had stayed in a public school setting, especially considering my declining happiness and mental state at the time. I think things would have gotten considerably worse if I'd just stayed in public school the whole time and taken the conventional route. So I think the biggest takeaway from PLC for me is that it gave me the perspective to realize that not every decision you make in terms of taking the path to become an adult is as important as conventional systems make it out to be. Because you hear teachers all the time, it's like in middle school, they're all saying, well, you got to do this to prepare for high school. And in high school, they're all saying, well, you got to do this to prepare for college. You got to decide what you want to do with your life right now. Otherwise, you're going to fail and just everything's going to go horribly wrong. And here I am, essentially dropped out of high school a week into freshman year, went down a very non-conventional path with PLC, had some wonderful people help me out and facilitate my learning. And now I'm in college, about to graduate, had a job, got a driver's license. No one would ever know. Not to say that I wouldn't want people to know. I love telling people about my experience at PLC, especially one time, just specifically, small aside. I had a college professor go on a long rant about big brother grading programs where there's a lot of oversight in high school, and oh, parents are going to yell at you for your report card. And then I let him go on for about 5 minutes, and then I just said, I went to a non-conventional schooling system where grades weren't real. And he told me to leave. But I love just dropping those bombshells on people because they never expect it. I think there's a connotation, like a sort of negative connotation with homeschoolers that just is not real at all. You can still be wonderfully successful no matter what you do in your teenage years, as long as you make decisions that you feel are right for you. So
Great.
if anyone has any questions, feel free to let me know.
Thanks, Ryan. That was great. Yeah, I didn't know that story with the teacher. That's a good one.
It's really fun.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah. And I love what you were saying too about how learning the conventional things in the unconventional way had advantages you didn't realize because you could go at your own pace and really study the things that were more difficult and pass over the things that you got really quickly. That was interesting too. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to Luke, who is a current member and actually a new member, but doing so well. So Luke's gonna share his experiences.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So yeah, my name's Lucas. You can call me Luke. I am a junior in what would be, traditional high school. And I started at PLC a few months ago, I believe in like early October, late September, after I sort of realized that my high school education, well, I wouldn't say, I think I realized that my education wasn't sustainable when I was in middle school, but it really took a few years for me to convince my parents that an alternative education style was right for me. Because when I was in middle school, I had a sort of intrinsic impression that my grades were sort of a direct representation of my self-worth as a person. And what that meant is that I basically, shot for absolute perfection, and anything else I sort of reflected as I'm not good enough as a person. So I only got A's and A pluses in middle school. And I characterized that as success. But even then I recognized it was unsustainable because, the extracurriculars I was taking, the homework I was doing, I would get home around, 5 to 7 p.m. and then do about 3 hours of homework a night. And I'd end up going to bed around, 11 to 12. And then I have to wake up at 5 a.m. in the mornings. So I didn't get a full night of sleep for like, I think 2 straight years, I would imagine. And that probably didn't exactly help my brain development, but but it sort of made me realize that that what I was doing wasn't how I wanted to learn. And what sort of pushed me forward in that middle school environment was me thinking that I was going to be happier in high school. It was sort of that notion that, as Ryan was saying, you're going to prepare for this, you're going to prepare for this. I assumed that the work that I was doing in middle school would prepare me for something sustainable and something happy in high school, but that wasn't the case. I got to high school and I was still sleep deprived. I still hated all of my classes. And at this point, I sort of started to fall off the curve. My grades went down dramatically. My happiness went down dramatically. I became much more reclusive. And it got to the point where, and this was in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, I would have about one conversation every 2.5 weeks with anyone, including my teachers. I think I had about one conversation with a student every 2 months, and that means something that's above like 3 sentences. So it was bad. It's kind of funny, but it's not funny. And eventually at that point, I started to advocate for a homeschooling education. And I didn't know that, Princeton Learning Cooperative existed, because I'd always known that I really liked to pursue the subjects which I enjoyed, which is, psychology, public policy. And I would explore these through avenues just like with YouTube or with, educators online, Khan Academy. And I realized that it was that kind of learning that I really enjoyed. Whereas when I went to school, it was just pain tolerance. So before I came to PLC, I would spend all my time in that, limbo between productivity and lethargy. And it was mostly the latter. And homework would hang over my head constantly because it was something that you can't turn off. And what that meant is that I couldn't pursue the things that I like to do. It didn't allow me to explore learning in a way that I wanted. And I was sort of bound to the curriculum that I thought was too slow in some places and unnecessary in other places. So I finally got to PLC eventually after convincing my parents and actually a recommendation from my therapist to check this place out. And at first, my parents, they're very, very good people, but they're very concerned with meeting expectations. So when I got here, their biggest concern was exactly how this would legally and academically get me into college. Because this isn't, a traditional high school experience. And like I think, Ryan mentioned, that sort of has a negative connotation to it, which is, I don't think is representative of what PLC does. So at PLC, I can apply myself to my work in a way that I wasn't able to at my old high school or really at all before. The classes I take are my choice and my commitment. Instead of evaluating myself based, solely on my grades, I can actively focus on my education. And as a result, I'm learning at like a pace I never thought possible. So I can pursue the subjects I like psychology and pharmacology and public policy, in ways that I didn't know that I was even able to do. Recently, actually, I decided that my old school, which is Hopewell Valley Central High School, I conducted a 30-page research report into the efficacy of their current drug policies. And because I believe that they're inefficient and they don't confer with contemporary evidence. So right now I'm in the process of working with the superintendent and the head counselor at my old school to try and get those policies changed. And that was something that I would never have even considered being able to do, because I was someone who was a part of, the system, a part of the curriculum. And I transferred that sense of low value onto myself. And, I'm going to be honest, at PLC, I feel excited to go to school. And I haven't felt like that in such a long time. I haven't felt like that since fourth grade. And what allows me to feel excited to go to school is that I know when I'm going to school, learning is the objective. It's at my regular high school or my regular middle school, the objective is always to get good grades. It doesn't matter if you get good sleep. It doesn't matter if you internalize the information or if you pursue the subject any further. What matters is that you get good grades. And when I got to PLC, I was able to change that notion. So now I have the extra free time without homework. I can practice, physical and mental well-being. I've been volunteering as an assistant instructor for the young kids classes at my studio for martial arts, Gracie Barra, for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I've been doing much more with nature, which has just allowed me to go on hikes and bike around the DNR Greenway in ways where I don't feel stressed anymore. So moving forward, I want to, further improve my knowledge of psychology and pharmacology at PLC and pursue a university education to become a psychiatrist. And I think that if I were to try and do that at public school, I don't even know that I would even be able to get into university, just because I found it so impossible to do that kind of work that I didn't see value in and that was imposed on me. So PLC has really given me an opportunity to do things that I didn't even think that I had the capacity to do. And now I feel like for a very long time, for the first time, that I'm in a comfortable place in my life where I know that no matter what, when I move forward and I learn, I'm moving towards a future that I like. So, and I also want to focus on my life right now. I spent most of my time in school pushing forward at the prospect of a better life, 1 year ahead. And public school taught me the value of my time by basically throwing it away. So in my new life at PLC, I intend on taking it back. And that's what I'm going to do through my pursuit of these classes and the subjects that I like, so that one day I can become the person that I know I can be, and that I believe that I'm entitled to be, despite, what contemporary public school puts so many kids through every single year.
Wow, really well said, Luke. That was,
Thank you.
I didn't know all your backstory too about the not getting enough sleep and all of that. And yeah, I'm so happy that you're here.
I appreciate it. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, that's like, I think it's like 80% of teenagers or something insane don't get enough sleep.
Yeah.
It's,
And when you said, didn't help my brain development and, sort of as an aside, but you're, I'm sure that's probably true for a lot of kids, and that's terrible. So,
it is. Yeah. And I even like, I sort of see it in my younger brother too.
mm,
And my old friends. One thing in particular is I used to go to South Brunswick High School before I came to Hopewell. And that is, if you're not familiar, it's a very, very rigorous environment. It's about 4,000 kids. And it's super high competition. And what would happen is I would have these, old friends that would go there, and I would ask them, what are you doing? And I had this one friend, and he was like, I'm taking AP. He's taking like, I think, some insane level of calculus in like his sophomore year of high. And I was like, dude, do you even like math? And he said, no, I hate math. I was like, then why are you taking these classes? And he was like, because my parents will hate me if I don't, or something like that. So I feel like that fostering that attitude in an environment like, the high schools that I used to go to is completely counterproductive to learning. And that's why I like PLC's model so much. And I want to use the education that I get from PLC and post-secondary education to sort of reflect that model of, intrinsically guided education throughout the rest of the U.S. education system, so that my kids don't have to go through, the sleep deprivation and hating what they do every day. I think that should be, the ultimate goal of all of us in the end.
yeah, it's a great goal. Thank you, Luke. Okay, we're going to now go to Allison. Allison is current member as well.
Hello, I'm Allison. I'm 16 years old, and I'm different from the Allison who was a mentor here at PLC. So actually last year, I went by Allie, but now Allison is not at PLC, and so I go by Allison now. Before PLC, I was homeschooled. I started homeschooling I started homeschooling just after second grade. I didn't go back to third grade because it made me very unhappy and I wasn't satisfied with what I was learning. And especially my mom wasn't satisfied with how I was learning, which was revolved around stress. I would cry every time I came home from school. I would cry while I was doing work. Most of it was spent crying, and I cried so much that I had to get a doctor's note that said I could keep water on my desk because I was so severely dehydrated. And so I didn't go back to that in third grade or for third grade. And I started homeschooling. It was great. I loved it. But something that I didn't expect was the loneliness that I would feel during quarantine. It didn't help that around that time I moved to a new house, and I was far away from all my friends. And so I just spent a lot of time on my own. I started taking college classes actually, but they were all online. So I wasn't even like leaving my house to go to college. It was just a very lonely time for me. Um, I even started to have trouble motivating myself, which I didn't really struggle with before, because I just was very lonely, I think. And so it continued on like that for a while until March of 2022 when my mom told me about PLC, and it sounded like it was going to be the place for me right off the bat. I was very intrigued by like the flexible schedule and lack of homework. That was a big one for me. And just how nice everyone seemed. So on my first day there, I did make so many friends. I started so many classes. I loved it. And I just knew it was going to be the place for me. I continued to learn so much throughout the rest of my school year and made more friends. And right now I'm taking classes, a lot of classes, but my favorites are philosophy, which is actually taught by another student at PLC. It's always got fun, in-depth conversations. Um, I love mini med school because of how informative it is. And I love physics because to me it's like math, but it's fun. Neuroscience because it's been my passion for a really long time. And conversational Spanish because the learning style is so easy for me to understand. I've even learned so much about topics I previously wasn't interested in, like geography, chemistry, history, and civics, just to name a few. And when I'm not at class in PLC, I'm I'm in the library studying for college. I'm in the main room talking with my friends, or I'm walking to the shopping center for lunch usually. It's really amazing. Um, Outside of PLC, I've started Spanish 101 at West Virginia University online, and the Spanish class at PLC is definitely helping with that. I already have 15 credits, and I'm working towards getting 30 before I graduate from PLC and I move on to full-time college. Um, and I also have a 4.0 GPA. I'm in the National Honor Society of Collegiate Scholars. It's been an amazing opportunity for me. Um, I coach children's archery every Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Sorry, and I don't go to PLC on Fridays. I know that wouldn't that sorry, I should mention I have dyslexia. I know I wouldn't be able to do that if I was in public school. I wouldn't be able to take time off for something that I love and something that's important to me. And I'm so grateful that I have that opportunity here. And it's just been amazing, really. I've started bow hunting. I uh, killed my first deer with, that's not a nice word to say, but I shot my first deer in December of last year with my dad. And overall, I would say that PLC has improved my life outside of PLC as well. And the optional homework really has helped like I thought it would. If I feel like I just can't do the work for a class, I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to stress myself. I don't have to cry myself into dehydration. I just don't have to do it. And I can explain to the instructor and they will be understanding. They'll let me off easy. It'll be fine. And judging by my class list, you can probably tell that I want to go into neuroscience after I graduate from PLC. I'm not entirely sure if I want to go to medical school because it just doesn't really sound like the right choice for me. Still, all things to consider, I would really love to be a neurologist. Right now, I'm just trying to focus on where I'll go to college full time. I might go to West Virginia University, but I am hoping to stay closer to New Jersey. I'll go visit all the Ivy Leagues because why not? Why not? It's not going to hurt me. And that's where I am right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Allison. That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Learned some
Any
things about
questions?
you as
Sorry.
well. Yes. All right, so we are going to move into questions now. So if you have any questions, you can either put them in the chat or since we have a smaller group, you can feel free to just voice them too.
Do you have questions?
Nothing at the moment, no. I mean, I got a general idea.
Yeah, so Emma and I have visited PLC and Emma spent the day and she really enjoyed it. And I was able to ask Joel some questions. Just a second.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, so I was able to ask Joel questions. I mean, it was really great to hear from the students, current and former. I can a lot of the things you're saying, I would say echoes what Emma has been saying. So I can see how she would be, you know, the right fit and how PLC would be a good fit for her. Emma, do you want to surface and do you want to ask something? Because I know you're there.
Yes,
She's
I
been
am here.
DMing me. She's been DMing me about my facial expression, so I know she's watching.
Yeah, you're welcome to ask anything, Emma, either if you want to speak it or if you're more comfortable, you can put it in the chat.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like, to be honest, I like, I can't think of any questions off the top of my head. So
Sure, no problem. I actually had a question for Allison. So you had mentioned how you're kind of studying these things that you're interested in, but then you also started figuring out things that you started doing things that you weren't interested in before and you didn't realize you were interested in. And that's often a question that we get about PLC or just this model of learning is like how can people study or learn things that they don't even know they're interested in if they're only choosing things that they're interested in. So if that makes sense. So I'm wondering how it came about that you started learning things that you didn't realize that you liked.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. Unmute myself. Yes. Sorry, computer issue. Yeah, I am sort of just the type of person to jump into things and figure it out while I'm there. So the way I started was really just talking to other people about like geography and chemistry and wanting to understand what they were talking about motivated me a lot. But then again, if you know something and you just cannot motivate yourself to do it, I don't think you necessarily have to do it. But in the case that you don't know something and you want to start learning it, then you could do what I did and just jump right in. It worked for me.
So you just started trying things.
Yep.
You're curious. Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that part of it was that some other kids at PLC were doing things as well, and then you kind of like joined in on things that they might be doing too?
Yes, actually, like the physics class, or this year actually, the physics class, I wasn't planning on taking it, but most of my friends were in it, and so I decided why not, and I still love physics. I love physics.
Nice.
I wonder if I could ask, to hear all the panelists talk about it. So you've all been very gracious and saying very nice things about PLC. But I'd be interested to hear each of the panelists just talk about like what's the hardest part of, because to a large degree, you're kind of in charge to a large extent of your education and the way you spend your time. Like, what did you experience as the challenges associated with that? Like, is there anything that just comes to mind about what's hard about it?
Do you want me to start?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So the biggest challenge educationally for me is I was constantly thinking during my time at PLC about the sort of trade-off between pursuing your own education and sort of going through the flow of the public system. Because when you're in the flow of the public system, you're getting the math, you're getting the science, you're getting the English, you're getting all the other things that come with that at the same pace as everybody else. So I was always thinking, okay, I'm not following that exact path anymore. There are going to be points that I don't touch upon. Is that enough to pursue the things that I am more interested in personally worthwhile? And that was always a question in the back of my mind. And I think the more time that has passed, the more confident that I've become in the fact that the answer is that yes, that trade-off was absolutely worth it. I mean, there are plenty of people I talked to that went through public high school and the whole public system, and none of them remember calculus anyway. But I'm having a great time with accounting. I set myself up really well. I don't like to touch on grades specifically because Lucas was talking about sort of using grades as a measure of self-worth, and I 100% struggle with that as well. So I try very hard not to do that anymore. But I'm almost at the end of my undergraduate degree. I've got a 4.0. I have one semester left. I don't have a lot of time to mess this up. And I attribute that in large part to being able to study it during my time at PLC and setting myself up for success in college, doing what I knew I wanted to do. And time again, just the core curriculum of public high school seems to not matter from the interactions that I have with other students at college. It's nobody cares about high school. Nobody cares about public high school. Nobody remembers anything they did in public high school. I remember the things I did at PLC constantly. I think they really just, everything I did at PLC left an impact on me that changed my frame of thinking in a way that just lets me sort of evade all of the things that don't matter in life, or the things that people want to make seem like they matter way more than they actually do. So for me, that was the biggest challenge, and I can confidently say that it was worth it.
Thank you. That was a really insightful answer. And I remember you working through that accounting textbook in PLC, just and so consistent with it, Ryan. I remember like day in and day out, you were very consistent with
Thank you.
that textbook. So that by the time you started studying it in Mercer, you already knew half the stuff that the professor was teaching. Great. Luke or Allison, would you want to comment on that, challenges with this type of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I think one of actually the biggest challenges I had to face was coming to the realization of the amount of time I had sort of wasted in my daily life. Because when I was a part of the public school system, there was always this notion that as long as I was, since you are moving at the same pace as everyone else, as long as I'm moving through it, even if I'm not excelling to the degree which I think I should be, it's still sort of excusable, because it's like I go into public school, I feel miserable all day, and this is not an over exaggeration. I actually can't remember what I did during some of those classes. And I come home and I did a day of public school. And that was worth something because it meant I had less public school left to do. So when I came to PLC, I was able to start evaluating my time based off of the quality of my learning. And that sort of allowed me to be much more open with myself in terms of the goals that I want to set every single day. Because there is definitely more self-responsibility at PLC, and I think that's very good, both for allowing students to grow and capitalize on their own intrinsic motivation, and also for building character. But it is something that when you're always having the work put in your face and the curriculum laid out in front of you, it's something that I had to come to terms with, which was that I wasted a lot of time, and the time that I have is my own now. And I need to make sure that I'm using that in a way that I think is effective, but also in a way that makes me happy.
Yeah, I think that's something that people work on their whole lives. So it's good to start start young. Allison, any response to that question? Challenges?
Sort of similar to Luke. I struggle with using my time responsibly. Actually, kind of the opposite of what Luke said. Especially when I'm not at PLC, and if the instructor assigns optional homework, it's very hard for me to like take the initiative to start that, because I know that if I don't do it, they'll forgive me for it and I don't have grades. But as I've progressed with PLC, I've started motivating myself more to do homework on my own. It's become easier for me. I don't have much to say about challenges. I really do love PLC besides that. So thank you.
So I have a question now, for anyone, including the staff. And it has to do with, I guess, in this intrinsic motivation that Luke mentioned. So the three students here, they came in, it seems like with a decent amount of motivation and the drive, and a desire to do things and to learn things. They just hated the way that public school was doing that. Have you had students, or is it ever a problem? And like I'm thinking of myself, like, what would I do at that age? Would I just go, like, if I had the opportunity, would I just go and like do nothing, just sit in the common room, scroll through my phone, talk to people, maybe drop in on a class once in a while, maybe something would sort of go in by osmosis, and then, go home and, do more of whatever, more of the same. So is that ever an issue, or like, does that ever happen, or is that only an issue because I'm like, brainwashed by whatever the school systems that that we're not supposed to be doing that, we're supposed to be quote unquote productive, because I know that I'm definitely on my kids' case about productivity, but
it's very annoying.
not necessarily school related, actually. Yeah, I'm just like, you got to do something. Like, I don't care what it is, just something.
Yeah.
So is that ever, an issue where somebody just comes in and really does not take advantage of the learning opportunities, which sounds like they sound great. It sounds great that, if what you want to learn, you can learn how you want to learn it. But is it ever a problem that when people just kind of don't?
I think Katie left the the meeting. She'll probably jump back in, but yeah, it's maybe it's more of a staff question. But yeah, I mean, it's really the interesting part of the work, right? So yeah, I mean, when young people leave, like the conventional system where it's been, everything is laid out for you. It's like, you just kind of follow these steps for a long time. It's really interesting when that's not there anymore. And the kids have, the whole range of reactions to that, right? Some of it on their personality, some of it on, just how, hard of an experience it's been in school sometimes. Like, how stressed out are they? How anxious are they? How depressed are they, right? And so we have people with various reactions. So I would say, like, for instance, like Lucas, like, it was like they, he got out of school and it was like so overjoyed at all the freedom and opportunities, and they just dive into a gazillion things, right? So that's like a common reaction for kids who have those kind of like already sort of established interests, and now, oh, now I can just like pursue that really well. So you get that. I mean, we also will have young people who come out whose experience in school has been much harder, right? Where it's super stressed out, and maybe have been chronically stressed for years and years and years and years, right? And so the first thing that I mean, if you've ever been long-term chronically stressed, it's like, and all of a sudden that stressor is removed in some ways, it's almost like you don't feel like I'm going to go start a million new things. It's like, it's more just like I need to like recover and just sort of like get work through that stress and things. And so what that can look like sometimes is sitting on the couch scrolling through their phones for a while, and it could be a significant amount of time, so if you ever knew anyone who like did 30 years at a job they didn't like and then retired, it's like sometimes they just sit there and watch TV, it's like it's just you're recovering from it. And so what we see over time, and then most people fall in the middle of that range, right? And so what we see over time is the people who have interests and have the freedom now to pursue it, do amazing things. The kids who are more in that sort of recovery phase, it takes some time, and the role there, it's not so much about classes and academics, because like if you're super stressed out, like my US history class is not going to fix that for you. It's the time, it's the support, it's the community, it's just helping people feel better, and then sort of approaching what comes next from that position of well-being and strength, right? And what we'll see is like oftentimes kids will just, I'm sorry, I'm being long-winded here, oftentimes kids will just start to see the other people in the community getting their driver's license, like starting to dabble at the community college, starting to use some of the classes and go on some of the trips that we have at PLC, and they start kind of taking small steps towards that as well. And eventually what we see is almost everybody, unless there's really significant mental health struggles they're beyond just like schools. I didn't like school, like if it's like serious clinical like depression, things like that require more treatment. But typically people they don't want to be kind of the person who's not doing anything, right? And so people start to slowly get involved in things and take an interest in things and kind of go on. And so, yeah, I mean, there's definitely some of that, but it's usually, we understand it in the bigger context of like what's going on with somebody's life and where they're at in that sort of progression. And I think that's one of the values of self-directed education and PLC is that we don't have any predetermined things that we have to do with kids. It's we can work with kids where they're at, wherever they're at in their life, and it's like what would be the most useful thing here, right? And it might just be playing a card game with a kid who's been seriously stressed out for a long time, and now all of a sudden they have some breathing space, and they just that human connection that Allison was talking about, that might be the place to start. And then down the road it might be helping somebody get into accounting, or it might be helping somebody do this, right? And it's just sort of taking measure where kids are at, and then paying attention and seeing what we could do to help them get where they want to go. That was a long answer. Any other staff want to jump in?
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
I had lost my connection, but I am back. Yeah. So I would just add that, and I don't think you spoke on this while I was gone. Sometimes it's just a matter of maturity too. and that eventually comes around as well. You know, so some of the younger kids might not feel so self-disciplined or motivated to especially do some of the more like traditional academic sorts of things, but they still like to do things. So we have a current member that, that you know, early teen boy who was very interested in if he could get a sharp pencil into cardboard just by throwing it, you know, and have it stick. And so he made this goal out of it, and he spent the whole day just perfecting it. So it wasn't just by chance that he'd get it, but that like it was a sure thing. And it seems, you know, kind of silly, but it's him working on accomplishing something. And then, you know, I'm sure that because we've seen this before, that as kids mature, that then gets applied to other things. So sometimes it's an issue of maturity.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's funny just it's like how you frame it, right? So it's like, think of like gym class in most, you know, middle schools. And it's like, you know, so the flexibility is that you can dive really deep into something and you don't have to necessarily get interrupted by, you know, 45-minute segments of time. And so he just, you know, he's like working on hand-eye motor coordination, but he just decided to spend, you know, 4 hours that day, you know, working on it all at once, and instead of spreading it out over, you know, however long. And so, yeah, it's and we see that all the time, like with kids who, you know, they learn in a natural way where it's like they're curious about something or they want to get something done, like, and they'll just go super deep into it for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then, like, you know, their curiosity has been satisfied, and then it's like, okay, good, you know, and it's not something where you need to drag that out for, you know, 10 months
Yeah.
and whatever. And, you know, that's the most meaningful part of that learning is when the, you know, iron is hot, or whatever, you know, metaphor you want to use. So it just allows for that as well, you know, it just allows for, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, thank you. That was, I think, good answers. Yeah, we that sounds reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah. Other questions, or I don't know. Trying to think if there are any questions I had too. Well, actually, Ryan, I had a question for you because you had said getting into college was super easy.
It was super easy.
Yeah.
Would you like me to go over that
Yeah,
process?
yeah. How easy was
So
it?
here's how super easy getting into college was. So I started at Mercer County Community College, and the main thing they want to let you in is a high school transcript, which can sound a little challenging when you go to a school that doesn't do grades. So essentially, I don't want to say workaround, but solution to that problem is I sat down with Katie, and everyone who wants to go to college essentially does this. We sit down and we look at all of the things that we've studied and the classes that we've taken at PLC, and we sort of try to fit them into what look like traditional buckets per se. So if I do accounting, you know, that's a course. If I go to Joel's US history course, that's a history course. And it's sort of a combination of self-evaluation and outside perspective. You take the combination of those things and you give yourself a grade for the course. And is it essentially making it up? Yes, but we try to be honest with ourselves, of course. So I sat down with Katie. We went over everything that I'd done at PLC, give myself a couple of, you know, A's and B's down the column, submitted to Mercer County Community College. They accepted me. And then I started going, and no questions asked. And now, you know, once you get into community college, getting into an actual university, even easier because you've already got credentials. And, you know, hopefully you do well in community college. I mean, that part's important too, of course. But that's how super easy getting into college was for me. I took stock of what I'd done, told them what I'd done. They said yes.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I ask Ryan, so going to college after PLC, so going to college where there are actual courses and actual grades and like people expect you to be somewhere and do something, it was okay. Like at that point it was somehow, I guess, because you were now studying the things you wanted to study, accounting, I guess that was better.
Yeah, so I think going back to public school before PLC, I was always good at school. I succeeded in a school environment. I just was miserable the whole time. So sort of taking the time at PLC to sort of recenter my life and get rid of the things that were making me miserable and reframe my whole perspective allowed me to get back into the traditional system, still being good at school, just not being depressed, essentially. And from there, it was just so much better and easier.
Yeah, we see that a lot. I mean, it's a lot of times it's just the context, right? Where, if you're the one choosing to put yourself into that environment for your own reasons, like, I want to go do this because this is part of what I want to be doing, it can make all the difference. I mean, because, community college classes and high school classes are remarkably similar, right? It's not like it's this huge difference, but we had kids who really struggled just with all the other stuff in high school, who then, go and do, like Ryan, do really well in those traditionally structured classes because they're choosing to be there for their own reasons, and it just kind of like changes the whole, kind of dynamic there, as opposed to something you have to do. It's like something you're choosing to do. So.
I have a technical question.
Mhm.
In Emma's case, she's actually good at taking standardized tests. So if she were to take an SAT, how would it work? Because she did well in PSAT, so the assumption is she'll do decent on SAT as well. But can she just get so SAT? She doesn't need high school to administer it, right? It's just
Yeah, she could still just sign up for the SAT and take it,
Okay.
even though it is, the test is usually taken in a high school, in the local high school. She could still do that, even if she's not enrolled in the school.
Mhm.
And we sometimes we have kids who would like to work with the tutor at PLC to prepare for the SAT as well. So
Mhm.
she could do
Sure.
that as well if she wanted to. Yeah, and it's if a kid's college bound, that could be a good thing to do. A lot of schools are test optional now, but if they're going to do well on it, and it might serve them. And also as a homeschooler, sometimes that can be helpful, especially if the child hasn't gone to any community college classes or anything else to sort of show how they would stand against other students. Taking the SAT can help, even if it is a test optional school, as a homeschooler. So
Yeah.
Great.
yeah,
It's just about 8 o'clock.
good. Just about 8 o'clock now. So I just want to thank all of our panelists. You guys did a great job. Thank you very much. And thank you guys
so
for
much. Yeah.
attending. Yeah, and your questions. I appreciate it. So great.
Okay.
I hope you have a good night.
You
And you too,
too.
Emma.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.